Here.
Bianca.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
Dana.
Here.
George. Sarah.
Here.
Kat.
Here.
Tyler.
Here.
Emily.
Here.
Danielle.
Here.
Carly.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
Alex.
Yeah. Here.
Is Nathaniel here? Caitlin Hayes.
Here.
Christina. Here. Are there any senators here that I forgot? Okay, good. To reclaim the ideals of student governance, we, the Hood College Student Government Association, strive to represent students, advocate for change, encourage participation in student governance, and uphold tradition. The first order of business, we're going to have President Volpe speak first, and then we're going to open the floor for student senate. Okay?
Well, thank you. Good evening. I don't think I need the mic. You guys can hear me back there, right? Well, I don't want you to have my back to you, so I'll stand here. Let me acknowledge Dean White, who you all know, and let me also recognize our provost, Dr. Kate Conway Turner, and she'll have some things to say to you as well. I didn't know exactly what the agenda would be today. Are we recording this, Mark?
This is for the newspaper website.
Okay, so
Yep.
we're recording this. And I thought I saw Catherine back here somewhere.
Hillary's
Okay,
actually
So
reporting.
whatever we record and whatever we put in the paper, we're going to give equal time to all
Right.
positions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Speaking as a former college and also as a newspaper reporter, and also as one who's worked on the radio, so I love communications. And I get newspaper. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I don't need to make any long sermons, but I will stay here along with the provost as long as we need to answer questions. Now, I came to the executive committee last Thursday night to chat briefly with them and sit and listen because I guess this iPad thing has created some interest on campus, and that's a very good thing. Let me just make some general comments about it. In my early observations about that were one of some surprise and even a little bit of disappointment. Surprised that at least there are some students who weren't real happy that the college is looking and exploring this technology, and a little saddened to see some things that were written or printed or said that were not totally factfully correct. So minimally, we need to put all the facts out there so we're all speaking about the same way and saying the same items and understand the situation. Let me quickly put all this technology in a context. And by the way, to show you that I'm on the cutting edge, I have my BlackBerry, I have my iPad, I have my netbook that I take on the plane with me, and my cell. And you know what I wish I could do with these things? Dean White will tell you, throw them away, because I'm not a techie person, I have to admit that. I'm more of a Luddite than a tech person. But I have all the stuff. And as president, I feel I have a responsibility to stay somewhat current in the technology area, although I am not the tech person. And when the iPad was first discussed, I guess last spring at one of our meetings, to be very honest with all of you, I didn't know what the iPad was. So I have to admit that too. And as the conversations took place last spring, I began to understand this new development in technology. You may not know this, but you can go way back when you maybe were 3 or 4 or 5 years old, or maybe not even born yet, when Steve Jobs and the Apple computer came out. Shortly after that development, Hood College had big old fat computers on all the desktops here. We had desktop computers all over the place. As that technology continued to grow and develop, Hood College was told you have to have a network campus. That's the next development. You have to have a, quote, wired campus. So Hood had wires going underground through the walls all over the place. Wired. That was the newest technology. And then after that, the technology continued to develop, and then we were told we need wireless. So all those wires that we put in were dead, and then we went wireless and invested quite a bit in that capacity. We were told that we need to do more of our experiments in the Science Center on the computer and not physically. And so we put technology in the science center. Then came the netbooks, the notebooks, the laptops, and we acquired a lot of those. You probably aren't aware that as recently as last semester, we purchased brand new computers for all of the faculty. We are in the process of spending tens of thousands of dollars more for computers in the Science Center. We're constantly upgrading the Apple Lab. The point I'm making is, as an institution, and before I arrived, Hood has pretty much been on the cutting edge. As I said to Catherine when she called, that Hood is rather progressive when it comes to the whole issue of technology. And so when faculty and students were talking about this last spring, when it came to our attention, as president, I said, well, why not? Hood's been pretty much a leader in this area for many years, so go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead and explore. It came up in the spring. We had some students already had iPads. We had some faculty in business and science who wanted to do some things. So we had a conversation last spring. Dr. Funk, the then provost, said, let's look at it. We had our chief academic officer back then calling other institutions who had already adopted the iPad for their classes. We didn't know last semester, and we don't know today, if the iPad has a bright future or any future at Hood. We really don't know that. We're not sure what it may or may not do in terms of enhancing teaching and learning in the classroom. I certainly don't know. We do know that pretty interesting institutions like Stanford University, Duke University, University of Pennsylvania, and others have already adopted the iPad. So last summer we had some students and some faculty, we literally gave them iPads, a handful, in a couple of classes this past summer, and they were to experiment and explore and help administrators help us understand what's this all about. A number of faculty thought it was a good idea. We talked to faculty from the communications department, business science, some students, so we were kicking that around. Then the conversation went like this. Well, we're certainly not going to go out and acquire 1,500 iPads and drop them on all of our undergraduate students this year, and then tell all of our faculty they have to take all this new technology and immediately integrate it into the curriculum. That's not a smart thing to do, so we didn't do that. So someone said, well, why don't we run some kind of a pilot? Let's do an experiment. That's what we do in higher education all the time. So by happenstance, a donor, and this came up in one of the articles, I think, or one of the interviews about fundraising, and I think you're bright enough to know that the tuition that you pay here, your room, board tuition, is not enough to operate the college. We have to raise money outside of the college every single year. I'm out raising literally millions of dollars every year to augment your fees that you pay to operate the college. And we receive this money from donors, alumni, foundations, bequests, and so on. So we received a request, and this was restricted. We received two kinds of gifts in higher education, restricted and unrestricted. I like to think that all of you are very happy with what we've done with the underground. That was $1 million restricted gift by a foundation. They were here, they saw the needs that we had in the underground. I told them that place has been closed for 4 years, our students need more space. And so they gave us a restricted gift of $1 million, roughly, give or take 100,000, to redo the foundation and put that entire room in. Now I will tell you, I suspect we can find on this campus somewhere some students who might say, you know, spending $1 million on the underground, I wish it would have gone somewhere else. I know there are some faculty who would have preferred that that money be spent somewhere else. Quite honestly, Dean White will tell you, when I saw we were going to develop that, I thought we were going to have a coffee shop on one side, then the lounge, and then some classroom area. And I was told, no, the students want this electronic game room. Well, to be very honest with you, that wouldn't have been my top priority, but we turned it over to Student Life, and they said, well, this is what the students want. So we put that in. My point is that was a designated gift. Whether I wanted to put $1 million there or not, or whether the faculty or some other students, when you receive a gift that is designated to do X, that's what you do. Last year, we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million plus on the turf field and the Nicodemus Athletic Complex. Now, I know there are a lot of student athletes on this campus that love that decision. I'm sure there are some other students that might be thinking, why did the college spend $2 million on an athletic field when the heat in my room doesn't work? Those were designated gifts. So when we received a designated gift for technology experiment of roughly $150,000 or so, someone said, well, maybe next year's entering students, the first year students, could come in. We can kind of use them as experimental subjects. We have a couple of freshman-only courses. We can spend this year having faculty train and reflect and explore and develop and so on. And we can run a trial balloon next year. I said, well, if you want to do that, let's talk to the faculty, let's talk to the students. So that conversation continued through the spring, into the summer. Dr. Funk left as provost, Dr. Conway Turner came as provost, we brought her in the loop. Those conversations continued. And so we know at the last spring's fall faculty meeting, some faculty members said, you know, we think that's a waste of money. Other faculty members said, these would be toys. Other faculty members said, I'm already using an iPad in my class, and there's great benefit here. So administratively, we really don't have a horse in this race. No decision has been made that we're going to have iPads across this campus. And when that decision is made, I'm not going to make it. It's an academic issue. It's an issue that impacts the programming and the curriculum, and students and faculty and the provost will reflect on what's going on and will make that decision. When I was asked, when Kate interviewed me Catherine interviewed me on the phone a while back, I said, I'm happy that there's this experiment going on. I think it's a good thing. Hood has been a leader in technology. Let's see what happens. So from the upper echelon of the administration, that's where we stand on this. I do understand two important points I want to make. Point number one, I've heard some students say, well, why are the next year's people getting them? Why not me? Right? That's a fair question. And it's also fair, I suppose, for our graduates of a year ago, this past year, saying, well, why didn't they fix the underground when I was here? I was at Hood for 4 years, and we had no underground. Or why did they put the field in now? If you're a junior or sophomore or freshman, you're probably going to be able in a year or so to participate in a new fitness center that we're hoping to build. If you're a senior, it's not going to be up in time, and I suspect a graduating senior will say, man, why didn't they have that when I was here? Well, these things happen. It's just reality. But there was some logic in trying this out on first-year students next year, because the faculty would have an entire year to work and develop that. And secondly, there would only be a few freshman-only classes next year that we'd experiment with. So that was the thinking behind all of that. So I